space in New Zealand Inc., Māori Inc. and Aotearoa New Zealand. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa, and any questions, could you please refer them to the Minister?
Kia ora, Pania, thank you. You raised some great points there, and interesting to think that 150 years on, we're still trying to figure out how to tell people what a pōhiri is. Fascinating. That leads, you made some other really great points too about how Māori tourism has started from a really great asset base, and our next speaker, John Thorburn, hopefully will be able to enlighten us a little bit about that. John comes from Ngāi Tahu, which is a large iwi in the South Island of New Zealand, and they've made significant investments into tourism product. And this again, I think, is showing how the developing Māori tourism sector is starting to cut across some very important players. So welcome, John Thorburn. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou, nei rā te mihi kia koutou katoa. I'd just like to acknowledge the Minister and my fellow panellists. The first thing you might notice about me is I don't look particularly Māori, which is true, I'm not. But that in itself, the fact that I have the privilege of working for a large successful iwi of Ngāi Tahu is part of the interesting story of Ngāi Tahu, which I hope to share with you now. And particularly, I think, if I can answer that question of how might a Māori-owned organisation in tourism be any different from any other organisation, perhaps that will be helpful. So, I apologise if we can't quite read the slides, but look at the pictures are great. So who is Ngāi Tahu? Ngāi Tahu is a large Māori tribe, or iwi, based in the South Island with 50,000 members. It delivers a range of services to those members, which I'll talk about shortly, and it has a commercial arm which started with a smaller amount of money as part of a treaty settlement and now manages assets in excess of about $800 million with property investments, seafood investments and, of course, tourism investments. So like many organisations, Ngāi Tahu is underpinned by some very strong values, and they define everything that we do and provide some guidance for how we operate. You won't be able to read those from there, but there are a couple there that will be familiar to people within the tourism industry, one being manaakitanga, which really is the value of looking after and caring for our guests in the most special way that we can. It's a very important value for Ngāi Tahu, but also an important tenet of the tourism industry generally. Another one that will be familiar is the one of kaitiakitanga, which really simply stands for the guardianship or the responsibility of caring for the resources that we manage and have been entrusted with us. And again, a very, very important aspect to not only to Ngāi Tahu, but also to all of New Zealand and all of the industry. A couple of other values that are interesting to me, the values of Ngāi Tahu talk about innovation and spirit and leadership. And one in particular on the end here is whanaungatanga, which derives from the word whānau, which really means being part of Ngāi Tahu is being part of a big family. And we certainly do whatever we can to look after our brothers and sisters in the commercial world, and we're not immune to the occasional family squabble. So what does Ngāi Tahu as an organisation get up to? The funds that have been earned from its commercial endeavours go towards sustaining and nurturing its culture and its identity. They have a range of social development programs, education, and of course money going back into that rare natural resource of the land and the resources around us, and putting something aside for future generations. Around about $250 million has been invested in these areas over the last 10 years since Ngāi Tahu formed following its settlement, so it's a pretty serious commitment to these areas. Which leads me to the Ngāi Tahu vision, which is something that I find personally really inspiring. It goes like this: Mō tātou, mō kaururi, muri aki nei, which in English translates as for us and our children after us. And I think, for me personally, that's a really inspirational statement, and one that I can relate to easily. And I think all of New Zealanders and all of the tourism players can relate to that too. It's the idea that whatever we do today will shape and define the future for the generations that follow us. and something that we carry around with us with a lot of sense of responsibility. So it's a great guiding vision for an iwi to have. So, who is Ngāi Tahu Tourism? Again, apologies, you won't be able to see that very well, but in essence we're a large tourism player that clearly is part of an iwi organisation. We have reasonably well-known brands up and down the country, and we are growing to the point where we're very close to achieving 1 million individual customer experiences each year. And what defines us as an organisation? Well, clearly those values underpin everything we try and do. But what's important perhaps for the context of this discussion is how do we go about the business of delivering some aspect of cultural tourism and Māori tourism? And our approach is a subtle one. It's an approach, I like to use the word infuse. We try very hard to infuse what are mainstream products with touches of culture. Because we deal with so many customers, we have 1 million customer experiences, we try to give them just a taste of what a cultural experience could be, and perhaps if we're successful in doing that, it will inspire them to dig deeper and open up more intense cultural experiences that might be available in the wider industry. But because of the scale that we have, we can just infuse this inside our existing products. Now, some products that we have lend themselves to this more than others. If you can envisage, some of you may be aware of our product in Queenstown called the Shot Over Jet. When you're hurtling down a canyon at 80 kilometres an hour doing spins, it's not the ideal time to be explaining the Maori legends of the place, because people aren't generally listening. So we take a light touch with Shot Over Jet, but there are other experiences we have where we have more time to build a relationship with our customers, and we can tell much richer stories. And an example that I just might refer to is a product that we have called the Dart Riverjet Safaris, which operates in the Dart Valley just outside of Queenstown. It's a half-day experience, and this is a good example. I think the Minister made a reference to this in terms of the types of things we can do. Here we can tell stories around the legends of the lake of Wakatipu. This area is a very rich place for Ngāi Tahu because it's the original source of much of their greenstone or pounamu, which is a special tonga or treasure for Ngāi Tahu. So in doing this, we can share amazingly rich stories with our guests, which does two things. Firstly, we believe gives us a little bit of a point of difference. It gives us a chance to tell a unique story, but it also speaks to an aspiration that Ngāi Tahu has, which is to keep its culture and its stories alive. And one way that it can do that is through tourism, because if we continue with the oral traditions of telling these stories to guests each year, the stories will endure. And this lends itself to, even when we make a sale of pounamu or greenstone in our stores, it's not just a sale like you would have in a normal tourism, a tourist shop. This is us being able to give a real rich story around that pounamu, including tracing that individual piece of stone back to where it was extracted from the river that it came from, and every individual stone having a story around it. So there's a rich context that we can provide to the even the sales that we make around our products. So this is just layers of subtlety, but it is a way of creating a sense that this is a different experience because it's a Māori-owned organisation. The other aspiration that Ngāi Tahu has is to encourage more of its people into the tourism industry, and we do our best to play a role in this. So we've done a range of things, but one program that was successful recently was a program with Lincoln University where we jointly funded a range of scholarship students in tourism degrees. So this is an example of one of our proteges of this. His name is James Tawa, and he's just recently qualified with a tourism degree from the Lincoln University and now working in one of our attractions at Rainbow Springs. And we have several of these people that we're nurturing through our business with the hope that one day one of those people will be standing here talking to you on behalf of Ngāi Tahu Tourism. So in the very short space of time that I had, that was an attempt to give you a taste of how Ngāi Tahu operates and Ngāi Tahu Tourism particularly. I know there's questions at the end, and I have some more material if people are interested. So thank you for your attention. Kia ora tātou. Kia ora mō tō mahi kaha. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora, John. Thank you very much. It's interesting how large iwi are taking control of mainstream tourism operations and fusing culture through that. That leads us beautifully on to our last speaker for this morning's session, Tupara Morrison. Tupara sits on the board of Te Puia, which is a very large cultural experience in Rotorua, but is also now heading up Whaia Mai on behalf of Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei, who are the mana whenua, the people of the land here in Auckland. And he's here to talk to us about some of the challenges that mana whenua particularly face in large urban areas like this, and about the same sustainability of cultural tourism. Kia ora tupara.
Kia ora Andrew, ngā mihi ki a koe. To my fellow panellists, kia ora tātou, kia ora tātou katoa. Auckland's visitor plan for 2011 set the roadmap for reaching Auckland's tourism goals by 2021. Growing Auckland's visitor economy to 6 billion, almost doubled the size of the economy in 2010 at 3.3 billion. Hopeful? Yes. Optimistic? Possibly. Aspirational? Absolutely. It is this type of leadership that we need to ensure Auckland and Aotearoa New Zealand are well placed to take advantage of global travel trends and increase the yield from each visitor to grow productivity and profitability at the local level. Think global, act local. But for this type of step change, local means more than the administrators and regulators in Auckland. It is about meaningful engagement with iwi to achieve that step change, to achieve that stretch. Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei is ready to participate in this conversation along with our Tāmaki collective partners. Why? Because we all want to unlock the potential of our asset base, both physical assets and cultural capital. We want to exercise leadership through participation in this global sector, and we want to realise the aspirations of our people through training, employment and business success. Two overarching outcomes were identified as essential to Auckland's success as a visitor destination: growing demand for Auckland and enhancing the visitor proposition. I'm in a real unique situation where, as Andrew said, I'm on the board of Te Puia. I'm from Te Aroa, but 6 months ago I took up a role with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei to lead their tribal development, which includes our tourism opportunity. To grow demand for Auckland essentially requires investment in infrastructure, capacity, connectivity and facilitation, aspects that make it easier to do visitor business in Auckland. Mana whenua, or those who exercise traditional authority over land, are a critical part of that discussion as they bring a growing balance sheet that can be leveraged into strategic investment partnerships. As the Māori trustee, Jamie Tuta, who's sitting over here to my right, is discovering in China, access to cheaper capital is an opportunity to release land asset potential, generating more productive use of Māori resources here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Treaty settlements continue to drive the emergence of tourism potential for mana whenua through ownership or co-management rights of strategic assets in particular destinations. I'll touch on mana whenua again shortly. With regard to the second outcome, to enhance the visitor proposition in Auckland, Māori tourism needs to place its focus on value add. It needs to position itself as being of special interest to visitors through three key offerings, and they've been touched on by my fellow panellists earlier: uniqueness, authenticity and connection. Māori cultural product delivers these three offerings across the country. However, we need to build preference for delivery of Māori cultural product in Auckland as a major gateway for international visitors. This will then strengthen the value proposition and appeal of Māori tourism nationally. That statement isn't about competition amongst cities or regions or operators, but rather a call to collaborate and ensure we maximise the cultural capital that Māori have in Aotearoa, New Zealand. That we take visitors on an iconic journey of our whenua, our land, and of our moana, our water. What sets our cultural capital apart is the richness of our stories. Not legends or fables, we'll leave that to Hobbiton, but real life stories. Stories about real people, stories about actual events, stories about the coming together of cultures, uniqueness, authenticity, connection. And I think this media audience more than any other knows the value of those three components in a story. The sustainability of Māori tourism in an Auckland setting will therefore be dependent on how well Māori operators develop and execute a strategy aligned to growing demand for Auckland and enhancing the visitor proposition. But it will also be dependent on the early engagement of iwi in the conversation, so we can contribute to guiding and achieving Auckland's success. Which leads me back to mana whenua. No matter what visitor destination we look at in Aotearoa, New Zealand, the importance of mana whenua is critical because it adds cultural capital value not only to the destination, but also to the experiences in a destination. I was fortunate enough in 2008 to be involved in the Rugby World Cup bid for the Bay of Plenty Rugby Union, and had to put together a proposal to get games and hosting into Rotorua. And Martin Snedden was actually the head of that organisation prior to him taking up his new role here in TIA. We knew that we had all the numbers right, we knew we had the facilities, we had all of those things right, and we got the opportunity to go and present to Martin. What we always focused on as key to our strategy was our relationship to mana whenua. That in the Bay of Plenty we needed to come together, we needed to collaborate. We needed to identify that we have iconic Māori mana whenua cultural capital, and we took that to Martin. We took along with us some key kaumātua from each of our 3 regions, and we got them to tell that story. We got them to impress on him what it means for that Rugby World Cup event to come to the Bay of Plenty. We didn't need to tell him anything else. That told him a story. Equally, ATEED and Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei are developing a very strong relationship. And Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei touches Trends 2013 in a number of different places. You would have met the chairman of our trust, Grant Hawke, at the opening, where he stood in front of a picture of Tumutumu Whenua, our whare nui at our marae, Ōrākei marae. We're supported by Ōrākei tribal members who were in the National Kapahaka Champions group Wakahuia. We're at stall number 1134 downstairs, Tamaki Hikoi, which gives Māori guided walks across Auckland's iconic volcanic cones. We have a tā moko artist, Kātera Mahi, who is in the Te Puia exhibit, and there will be other touches that will be revealed over the course of this event. Finally, at the end of the week, we are hosting at Ōrākei Marae the Taniwha Meets Dragon event being put on through Dr. Peter Sharples, the Minister of Māori Affairs. I guess it's appropriate, having said that our cultural capital is all about stories, that I leave you with one. And it's actually a good story to tell because it relates to the arrival of our colonial visitors, and that had been predicted years earlier by a matakite or a seer. So it relates back to where Chris started with us dreaming. That seer was named Tītahi, and the following tau parapara foreshadows Apihai Te Kaua's initiative in inviting Captain Hobson and his administration to relocate from Kororareka to Waitemata, the harbour that you see outside here. And it's been transmitted orally within the Ngāti Whātua of Tāmaki for almost 200 years. And it goes, he haha te hau e wawara e wawara. He tiu he raki, he tiu he raki. Nāna ia mai te puputara ki uta. E tīkina e au te kōtiu. Ko ia te pau whakairo ka tū ki Waitemata. Ka tū ki Waitemata I oku wairangitanga. E tū nei, e tū nei. And translated it means, what was the wind that was roaring and rumbling? It was a wind in the north, a wind that exposed the Nautilus shell. And in my dreams I saw that I would fetch the wind from the north to support the mana whenua at Waitemata. And the meaning of that translated into Hobson coming here is that the wind in the north was the Treaty of Waitangi. That the exposing of the Nautilus shell was symbolising the unfolding of a new order. And that I, as Ngāti Whātua, would be supported as mana whenua here at the Waitemata. I think we can relate that to where we are at the moment with visitor experience. All our visitors come from the north, from Australia, China, Japan, the United States and Europe. And that wind of the north is going to come here, and it will symbolise the unfolding of iwi Māori as a new order of tourism product and tourism experience, and that our dreams would fetch that wind and we will take advantage of it as mana whenua here in Tāmaki Makaurau. Kia ora koutou katoa.
Kia ora tūpuna, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we do have a few moments where we're open for questions. Again, if you do want to ask a question, please let the panel know where you're from, and if you could direct your question to that particular panellist, we'd be most grateful. Don't be afraid.
Hi, I'm Wendy Gomersall from the UK. I wonder if I could ask this a general question for the whole panel. Is, excuse my ignorance, but what is your definition of a Maori tourism product? Does it have to be Maori owned? Are they just reaping the benefits, or what is the definition?
Please take the short straw on that one.
That's a great question. Pania, perhaps you could tackle that for us.
Of course. Being the only woman on the panel, I don't mind handing